You are watching and listening to the Electronic Intifada. I am Jon Elmer. This is the Resistance Report for day 594 of Israel's genocidal war, and I am reporting this on the 22nd of May. Maybe we can start with the maps as usual to get ourselves acclimated. 80%. This is still last week's map. OCHA didn't update this map, but as Nora reported in her excellent newscast off the top of the show, more than 80% of Gaza is now a no-go zone. Khan Yunis, I'll get to Khan Yunis shortly, but evacuation notices all over Khan Yunis and all over the north of the Gaza Strip as well. Israel is carrying out 150 airstrikes a day that they're admitting to. They haven't acknowledged that tempo of airstrikes since December 2023 and January 2024. And again, as you see in everything that you see on your screens, and I know everyone that listens to this sees it on their screens all the time, you're never seeing fighters in these massacre scenes. You're never seeing armed people in these massacre scenes because Israel's targeting civilians and the resistance is waiting for the Israelis to advance. And as soon as they do, they are being hit. The Israeli media discourse is calling this stage of the war the Trump plan. But I'm going to give the usual caveat that I always do, in that Israel has a lot of plans, and the people of Palestine, the people of Gaza, and the resistance in Gaza does all their work to undermine those plans. And we know that many of these plans go to die in Gaza because they are defeated. But at this point, Army Radio released a statement the other day about the aid distribution. And again, if you didn't listen to Nora's news report off the top, you should go listen to that clip. It's an excellent report, and she covered some of that in her report. But Army Radio said that the Israeli plan to evacuate the north of Gaza is by creating new humanitarian aid distribution mechanisms to completely empty the north of its population. This is from Army Radio. Out of 4 distribution sites that Israel plans, 3 are in the south, based around the Morag corridor, and one of the 4 is in the middle areas below the Netzarim corridor, south of the Netzarim corridor. Establishing these humanitarian aid centers, Israel's plan is to allow access for Gaza civilians located in the north to access the food distribution site that's south of Netzarim corridor, south of Wadi Gaza, that separates Gaza City from the middle camps area. The idea of the plan, according to Army Radio, the idea behind establishing the center south of the Netzarim corridor is that anyone who comes from northern Gaza to the distribution center to pick up the only food that there is in Gaza, they will not be allowed to return north of the Netzarim corridor. This will be a, quote, one-way ticket, Army Radio said, effectively compelling the Gaza population to move south of the Netzarim corridor in order to receive food. Israel believes that this will finally empty out the north of its population and contribute to the complete ethnic cleansing of that. Now, we know that these have been Israel's plans all throughout the war, and they have not achieved that. In the beginning of the war in December, they asked everyone in North Gaza to leave, and told everybody to leave. And we know that hundreds of thousands, as many as 500,000, never left the north. And I think you'll find that that is the case again this time. Their people will not be leaving their land the way that Israel's plans suggest they will. So if we look at the next map, you can see this is the total destruction of the Gaza Strip. This is a map by 𝐓𝐡𝐞. It's a remote sensing indexing, bare soil indexing, to estimate the soil water content from satellite imagery. So essentially it shows you all of the tilled, destroyed, upturned soil, and you can see from buildings or from agricultural land, you see the destruction of homes, destruction of commercial and industrial buildings, and of course the destruction of the agricultural land. And you can clearly see this, the outline of the Gaza Strip clear from space because of this destruction that we've seen and we've been reporting on for these 594 days. Take a look at the next map. We'll start in the south. This was a map released by the New York Times that decided to cover the situation in Rafah. And you can see that's dotted line is the Morag corridor that I've been reporting on for the last few months. And you can see the destruction on either side. According to the United Nations Protection Cluster, 92% of homes in Rafah have been destroyed. And that is an ongoing process. And Netanyahu's been pretty open about this. He was open about it on March 31st when he said that Hamas will lay down its weapons, its leaders will be allowed to leave. We will see to the general security of the Gaza Strip, and we will allow the realization of the Trump plan for voluntary migration. This is the plan. We are not hiding this, and we are ready to discuss it at any time. So the Israelis, again, have plans of forcing people to the south, making them go to the south to get the aid that is being delivered through a private mechanism of American and Israeli contractors who are profiting off of these centers. And they're calling this the Rafah model. If we look at the next video, you can see what the Rafah model is about. This is from a video satellite imagery from 972, and you can see that this is Eastern Rafah. Last week, I broke down operations in Eastern Rafah, and you can see it just has been completely erased. This is the Rafah model for the Trump plan. Last week, I showed you the Rafah Brigade carrying out a series of operations called the Gates of Hell ambushes, and this is 10 months after the Israelis said that they defeated the Rafah Brigade. They came back a couple months ago and said that they needed to defeat the Rafah Brigade. So we know that these statements from the Israelis are for their domestic audience and to attempt to show military gains in this war, but they have achieved none of their goals. And if you want to reiterate their goals, they're very clear. They were, number one, return the captives through violence. That has failed. Destroy the 𝐓𝐶aM brigades. That has failed. They're about the same size as they were when the war started. Destroy the government. They've not been able to do that. We had Asma Nabia on the show last week from the Gaza municipality, showing the heroic work that they are doing. And the number four is that Gaza is no longer a threat. And we know that that is not the case. You have an entire generation of people growing up in Gaza knowing that resistance is their only option. Resistance in all different ways, like we talked about on this show all up till now. Resistance of the school kids going back to school, resistance of the doctors rebuilding the hospitals, resistance of the municipality workers who are fixing the water, constantly fixing, rebuilding as the genocide is going on. And that is the resistance across society. If we look at this next slide, number 4 is the evacuation notice of Khan Yunis. So this is a significant evacuation notice pushing people out of Khan Yunis, a significant city and the refugee camp, as well as the 3 or 4 suburb areas outside the farming villages that are out to the east of Khan Yunis. And the Israeli military said that the IDF will launch an unprecedented attack to destroy the capabilities of the resistance in this area. We'll remember that the Israeli military was driven out of Khan Yunis in March of 2024 by a series of spectacular resistance operations that were called the Night of Power ambush that people can go back and look at. But just this massive evacuation of Khan Yunis. And I just wanted to show you this one more, the next one, the attacks on the hospitals here. They can't even keep this up to date. This is the World Health Organization's official tally. It was published last week, but just in the week that since it was published, and it only covers up to the 7th of May, what you're looking at your screen, if you're listening, we have 686 attacks on healthcare. 910 people have been killed in those attacks, 1,380 people injured, 122 health facilities have been attacked, and 33 hospitals, and 180 ambulances affected by the 686 attacks. Since this was published, Nasser has been attacked, the Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. The European Gaza Hospital in Khan Yunis has been taken offline. In the north, the Indonesian hospital and Al Auda hospital have been attacked. Indonesian hospital is out of service now in the last 36 hours, as is Kamal Adwan for the fourth or fifth time during this war that Kamal Adwan has been out of service. But again, they rebuild it. And this is the Israeli military. They had a change of command of their most highly trained special forces, their Flotilla 13. These are their best trained troops. They like to say they're equivalent to the United States Navy SEAL teams. In the second sentence of the accomplishments of the outgoing commander at this handover ceremony, the second sentence said, during the fighting, Flotilla 13 operated in 8 hospitals in the Gaza Strip, such as Shifa, Rantizi, Kamal Adwan, the Indonesian, Nasser, and Al Amal. So this is the Israeli military special forces bragging in their accomplishments of sacking these hospitals that have been multiple times rebuilt by the Palestinians. So I just wanted to bring that up, bring that to your attention. We will move now to the north. In this next map, you'll see the Shajaya neighborhood. This is where we're going to be focusing on. This is a map from 2012, but I want you to see in the bottom, well, you can see in the center Gaza City and the old city, and then you see Shajaya is to the east of that. And if you look along the pink buffer zone, which was the buffer zone going back a decade and a half, you'll see Al Muntar Hill, and that is the hill that overlooks Gaza City. It's a key strategic location going back thousands of years of warfare in the Gaza Strip, and you can see it on the map there. And that's what we are going to be focusing on today. Just to set up Shajaya, it is the birthplace of the Qassam Brigades, and it is also the spark, the area where the spark was lit for the first Intifada after breaking out of Israeli prison inside Gaza. Islamic Jihad fighters battled with the Israeli military in Shajaya and sparked the fire in Gaza that would become a few weeks later the first Intifada. And in 2014, Shajaya was famous for essentially repelling the Israeli ground invasion during Operation Protective Edge, when a convoy, the first convoy of the ground invasion by the Israelis, was met by Qassam fighters in Shajaya. Their most formidable battalion is in Shajaya, and they met them and destroyed the convoy. They led to the death of 16 soldiers, 56 were wounded, and the Israeli military withdrew after 48 hours of pitched battle, tunnel-borne battle. The Israeli military withdrew and shelled Shajaya, creating, up till then, the worst massacre in the history of the conflict. Of course, this war has put all of those, has dwarfed all of those previous understandings of massacres. We have daily massacres that are at that rate now, but you can see Al Muntar Hill there. It's 1.5 kilometers from the Nahal Oz base. Nahal Oz is the main base that was attacked on the morning of October 7th, and it was a key pillar when it was overran of collapsing the Gaza division. There's been a number of operations in Shajaya this week as the Israelis move inch beyond Al Muntar Hill that you can see there. They're not even in Shajaya yet, and they're already being hit with significant ambushes, which include Saraya al-Quds on Tuesday, a return to sender operation using a 2,000-pound unexploded Israeli bomb and detonating it against an Israeli convoy. But the operations that we're going to focus on today are it's a series of ambush. It's an ambush by Qassam that lasted multiple hours and is called the Lions of Muntar ambush. And we watched also the first operations after the ceasefire were on Al Muntar Hill. We remember when Saraya al-Quds sniped soldiers on Muntar Hill. So they're getting hit before they're even moving into Shajaya. So we'll start with that operation with this next slide. The Israeli military and army radio, they described this as the fiercest battle since the ceasefire collapsed was was collapsed by Israel. They reneged on the ceasefire. The Israeli military talked about 5 cells appearing from tunnels all around them throughout the course of a 2.5 hour battle. And it was a multi-layered counter ambush because, as the commander here is setting it up, the Israeli forces moved in to set up an ambush, and they were spotted by 𝐓𝐡𝐞, which we can see in this next slide. You can see the surveillance. One, they've used pictorials here. This is the first time that we have seen 𝐓𝐡𝐞 use this, because parts of this operation were not on film, but they showed us how this worked. We're looking at a pictorial here of a 𝐓𝐡𝐞 fighter hiding in the rubble, watching Israeli troops arrive at to set up an ambush. They're arriving in the middle of the night, and 𝐓𝐡𝐞 in the rubble. We have a fighter here watching and surveilling them entering this position. So they discovered the infiltration of the Israeli military and Hamas border police undercover Mr. These are the undercovers that dress like Palestinians that were moving into this position. The commander opened the video by saying that the Israelis advanced at night and infiltrated into one of the houses in the Shajaya neighborhood. Thanks to the vigilance of our fighters, this infiltration was spotted and ambushed the next day. According to Army radio, they were setting up this ambush at this site. If we look at the next slide, this is the ambush scene. Again, another pictorial showing the zero distance ambush. There was immediately a soldier from the Hamas, the undercover soldier, was immediately killed, according to the Israeli probe. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 ambushed the site the next day at 4:40 p.m., tipping off an almost 2.5 hour battle. That during the exchange of fire, the Hamas undercover was killed, and the rest of this operation, the next 2.5 hours, are effectively the attempt to recover this counter ambush that 𝐓𝐡𝐞 pulled off. If we look at the next one, you can see the key factor was hitting from zero distance, ambushing the building where the soldiers were in, but then also, as we've seen throughout this war, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 cutting off the reinforcements. And that's what we're seeing here. We have a pictorial of 3 𝐓𝐡𝐞 squad, 3-man squad with the Yassins and small arms fire. This happened 20 minutes after the initial ambush. This is the first recovery troops, and they were immediately hit, which we can see in this next video. They were immediately hit by 𝐓𝐡𝐞 fighters that were set up in position for this ambush. We can see on the screen here the Humvee, open top Humvee, being hit by a Yassin strike. The strike is from the ground floor, from the ground, and we're watching this from a cameraman who's up in a building. So it's a pretty good angle of that shot. The first missile, according to the Israelis, hit the Hummer, and 3 were seriously wounded in that Hummer hit. If the next slide we see is the tank comes after the Humvee. This is now stretching from 15 minutes to an hour, these 2 tank operations. And you can see again another pictorial to describe this section. But if we go to the next slide, we also have video of this from the operation. And again, this was just moments later. You can see the Merkava tank there getting hit from the ground floor, from the ground level again, and the fighter filming it. It's slowed down here the second time. You can see it's a clean shot, no active protection system deployment. The Israelis said that at least 3 were wounded inside that tank. So you can see the efficacy of the Yassins by cross-referencing it with the Israeli reports. This next one is the second tank that gets hit, number 13. They're showing us here in the pictorial cutting off the reinforcements, and we're going to see this from 2 cameras. This is the first camera that we're seeing from the window, and a second camera. So they've got multiple cameras and multiple cameramen on this operation. This was half an hour later. that this tank was hit, and again, 3 wounded and 1 soldier killed inside that tank. The tank commander, according to the Israelis, the tank commander was killed in the platoon commander was killed in this Yasin strike, and the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 report on it. So at this point, there's now 2 dead and 6 wounded in this fierce counter ambush that 𝐓𝐡𝐞 is operating, and the Israelis are unable to extract their wounded because they're continually being hit. So this is another pictorial of the tank, because 𝐓𝐡𝐞 describes this part of the operation. You can see the tank commander in this pictorial with his head outside of the turret, which we've seen them riding outside the turret before. And because this is now an hour and a half after the initial operation, perhaps they believed it was over. But we can see on the next slide that 𝐓𝐡𝐞 says that our mujahideen carried out a heroic sniper operation from a house, which resulted in hitting the head of the soldier who was riding in the tank. So that is a sniper operation, Al-Ghul sniper operation as part of this ambush. And the next slide, you can see the safe house that the Israelis retreated to is under attack here by 𝐓𝐡𝐞 fighters. There's this audio track through this entire video is gunfire on this Israeli position. So in the house across the way, where they try to take cover, another 𝐓𝐡𝐞 cell is on top of that. So these are why you hear in this Israeli investigation that went into this, because this story was a story in Israel. I reported on this ambush a few weeks back. This was from the 25th of April, because it was a big story in Israel, and they had to explain why there was 6 medevac helicopters for this one operation. And they had to explain the border police role in it. So we got a lot more information than we normally do out of Israeli field reports to corroborate the evidence from both sides. So a remarkable operation, the Lions of Muntar, and an indication of if the Israelis move forward into the built-up areas where they are not yet doing, that they will hit operations like this. And the next one is a video from Shajaya al-Quds sending salutes to Yemen. We see them attaching stickers here to Gaza-made rockets. The first sticker says, "Dedicated to the free and brave people of Yemen." The second one is a tribute to the commander of the Jenin brigades, Noor al-Batawi, who was killed the Friday before this video was made earlier this week. So a week ago Friday, he was assassinated in Nablus, but he's the commander of the Jenin brigades. We see them on the wall. You see Abu Hamza on the wall there, and you see Noor Batawi on the wall, and you saw Yahya Sari, who is the spokesperson for the Yemeni armed forces, on the wall there. And the voiceover on this says, "We salute the Yemeni people in all arenas, especially those in Al-Sabain Square, whose voices echoed with strength." That's the place where the million-person marches were every Friday. And the voiceover says, also referring to something that we heard Abu Hamza say before he was assassinated, that, quote, "We extend our salutations to the great leader Abdul Malik Badruddin al-Houthi, whose detailed speeches about the battle, its course, and its consequences, we, as the Palestinian resistance, listen to attentively, as if he were present with us on the front lines at the heart of the confrontation in Gaza, in a sincere expression of authenticity and Arab identity," they say about al-Houthi's speeches. And we also extend and salute the proud mountain voice of Yahya Sari, who is the spokesperson for the Yemeni armed forces. So tributes back and forth between the resistance factions in Yemen and in Gaza. And Abdul Malik al-Houthi, in his regular weekly Thursday speech, said to the crowds in Al-Sabain Square, said, "In response to the message from the fighters of the Al-Quds brigades, we convey on behalf of ourselves, our people, and the fellow fighters of the armed forces abundant greetings, and we ask that God grant you and all your fighters in the Gaza Strip support, victory, and steadfastness. So, uh, communications, like we always see from the resistance, communications to their own people, communications to their fighters, communications to the other factions, and communications to the outside world, resistance in the outside world. So, so that is the resistance report for this week from Gaza.